So I wanted this session to be kind of a culmination of what we've been looking at this season, which, for a lot of you, that will be lost in you, and that is perfectly fine. That being said, I also wanted to set up a framework of what awareness through movement is about. So, in the beginning and throughout, you have awareness. So, in this moment, you see, what do you notice? And even though we silly humans have this tendency of judging and evaluating pretty much everything we encounter, the nature of noticing is just that. And so in that way you can even notice the chatter that comes up around the process of noticing. Now, one thing that makes the Feldenkrais method unique is how we use sensation as one of our tools for becoming aware. So as you're resting there, notice the particular way that you're making contact with the mats. And you might notice that the sensation of how your right leg is touching the mat might be different in some way from the sensation of the back of your left leg. And then similarly, you might get a sense that the sensation of the back of the right side of your pelvis is different somehow from the left side of your pelvis. And then notice how your two shoulders are contacting the floor. And see for yourself, is there any kind of difference in the sensation around your right shoulder, around your left shoulder? Feel the contact that your right arm is making with the floor. And what kind of differences can you notice with your left arm? What's the feeling of the pressure on the back of your head? It might be that the pressure is distributed a little bit more to the right side of your midline, or up higher up your skull, lower down your skull. Notice the inside of your mouth. What kind of space do you have in there? And then notice your lungs. What shape do you feel that your lungs are? So in the beginning, it's just noticing. We could say that's the most simplistic layer of awareness. And that's like meditation, right? But Feldenkrais method is not meditation. This is just where we begin and what remains continuous throughout. Now, your brain has this funny tendency of paying attention to what it's already paying attention to. And that expresses itself in sensation. So if you have a pain somewhere, I was going to say it's a particular pain, but I don't want to direct your attention that way. If you have a pain or discomfort somewhere, then your brain is going to keep returning to that sensation. So the next layer of awareness that we have here is then noticing what you don't notice, right? So if you go and bring your attention back to the floor, and the contact that you're making, then you might feel, for example, the space behind the back of your right knee and your left knee. That's the absence of sensation. And yet you might still, if you bring your attention there, you might get a sense of how it's different on the right or the left. And maybe not, right? All these things I suggest, you might say, no, I don't really notice that, I don't really feel that, and that's okay too. So there can be an obvious so-called dark area, blind spot, and then there's areas that are blind but less significantly so much that you don't even realize that you don't know. So that's the next layer. So now I invite you to bring your attention to your spine, which, again, the delineation of advanced or beginner is that those of us that have been doing this for a while have a more detailed view, more detailed experience of our spine than if this is new to you, right? So bring your attention to your tailbone. And then notice that your tailbone becomes continuous with your sacrum, which is the bone on the back of your pelvis. Now, see if you can tell where the top of your sacral bone ends, and you have your first lumbar vertebrae, your first low back vertebrae. And there's 5 of them there. So see if you can continue sensing up 5 vertebrae until you come to a vertebrae that's got little ribs attached to the side of it. And the first 2 ribs that you encounter are your floating ribs, which means that they don't wrap around your chest. They're just hanging out there. And already you might be discovering that there's parts of this part of your spine that are less clear. And then see if you can continue sensing up the vertebrae of your spine, your thoracic spine, meaning your spine that has ribs. And just notice for yourself, where is it clear, where is it less clear? And there's 12 segments of your spine that lead you up to the base of your neck. Your top rib in the back, and then you have the base of your neck all the way down there at your shoulders. And there's 7 bones that make up your neck spine, your cervical spine. And so see, how do you see that portion of your spine? And how that portion of your spine connects to your skull. So you could consider this the line of your spine, just like a chalk drawing or whatever, a marker drawing. And then bring your attention back down the line of your spine and sense a line that goes from the back of your right heel along the back of your right leg, back of your knee, back of your thigh, back of your pelvis, and sense where the right leg line connects to the line of your spine, just in your sensing. And notice if there's parts of that line that are less clear than other parts of the line. Notice where the intersection is. What part of your spine line do you connect the line of your right leg? Just like a child's drawing, right? And now play the same game with your left leg line. Start at your left heel and try to draw a line up the back of your left leg, straight up until it intersects with the line of your spine. Notice if one line of your leg, one leg line feels like it's longer or bunchier or somethinger than the other leg line. Clearer, heavier. And then see if you can simultaneously sense the two lines of your legs and the line of your spine, which a lot of you will say, no, I can't see all those things at the same time. So you just want to notice what you see when you observe in that way. And then again, you start to meet the potential of darker areas in your awareness. And again, for you guys that have been doing this for years, I'm sure you can think right now, oh, geez, I remember there was a time I couldn't see that part of myself, and now that's come into my awareness, right? Now, bring your attention up the line of your spine and feel how your right arm is making contact with the floor again. And now draw a line from the line of your spine that goes over your right shoulder joint, down to your right elbow, down to your right hand. And then return to your spine and do the same thing from somewhere on the upper part of your spine line. Draw a line over your left shoulder joint that goes down your left arm to your left hand. And now, can you see all 5 lines at the same time? Or do you find for you need to alternate one line and then the other? So in Feldenkrais method, we use these 5 lines. This is a quite advanced tool. It is a tool. And we use these 5 lines as a roadmap to get some sort of structure to our sensation. So this is the basics of awareness through movement. But now this is where things start to get really interesting, is when we start looking at the next layer. And the next layer is that word movement. Well, if it's not a movement class, how does movement fit into the picture? We use movement to generate sensation. And as you improve your ability to notice differences in your sensation, you improve the picture, the spectrum, the image that you have of your whole self, your sensory self-image. So go back to your 5 lines for a moment. And start doing a movement of bending and unbending your right knee very slowly. And as you're starting to explore that movement very slowly, see if you can find the pathway of least resistance. What is the amount of bending that requires the least amount of muscular effort? And ideally the highest level of pleasure. Do you remember what I said about sensation, right? Our brain is drawn to the, we could call it the loudest sounds, right? The biggest sensation, that's where your brain's going to go. So you can ask yourself, as you're bending and unbending your knee, a super simple movement, could you reduce the sound? And at the beginning, in awareness through movement, the bending of your knee is the focal point for your attention, which it remains to be. But now for you guys that have been doing this practice for a while, we start getting into something really interesting. So notice as you're bending and unbending your knee, bending and unbending your right leg line, how does that influence the line of your spine? When you bend and unbend your right leg line, does anything change about your arm lines? Can you use the movement as the focal point to experience your sensation? And you might notice there's parts of you, wow, oh yeah, I feel here, and then no, it disappears, I don't really feel that, and then oh, I feel that. And it's interesting. You just notice. Okay, now leave your right leg line quiet and start to do a movement of bending your left leg line and unbending it. And notice that you could do the movement so that your attention is on your knee, right? And with your attention on your knee, your experience of your leg is something. And with your attention on your knee and your hip and your ankle, your experience is something else. Does the sensation of the floor on the back of you change when you bend and unbend your knee? And then start to make it your own exploration so that you bend your left knee and unbend it, you bend your right knee and unbend it. And the moment you just start doing the movement mechanically, like it's a dance routine that you're trying to learn, that's a cool, interesting thing to do in a dance class, but that's not what this is about, right? We're here to experience deeper levels of sensation that form our self-image, right? So if you feel like, oh my fuck, I cannot listen, I can't feel this anymore, then that's time to take time out. You take a little rest, and then you see, am I ready to come back and feel again? Yeah, I am. Or maybe not, I'm gonna take a nap. Okay, great. So that's your learning process. And I mean, it's so interesting because I can even tell by looking at you, right? Some of you have a part of your sensory self-image that is much more pronounced than another part of you, right? Some of you are so used to using your knee in such a particular way that it influences how you use your ankle and how you use your hip. And some of you aren't so attached to how the movement of your knee needs to be. And so for you, you might find, that movement travels into different parts of your body. And that's not, there's no judgment there. That's just about what's happening with your awareness, right? Okay, now just pause for a second. Give your brain a rinse. Go macro and observe yourself in this moment, having this experience. How's it going? How are you doing? And now have your legs long, have your arms long, but make yourself into kind of an X shape. We did this a few weeks ago. A comfortable X, so that your hands can be on the floor. Your elbows might be lifted away from the floor. And a few times, do a movement of just lengthening your arms along the floor. Your right arm line, your left arm line, and then let that go. And see what that feels like, kind of like a morning stretch sort of feeling, cat stretch kind of feeling. Yeah? And see, probably if you go for a stretch, it's a pretty big sensation and it's probably fairly localized to one area. So start to play with that a little bit so that when you're lengthening your right arm line and your left arm line, you listen for how you can do less in one area so that the movement is more equally distributed. And then again, as an advanced instruction, let yourself do your own research a little bit here, so that maybe instead of lengthening your two arm lines, you play with bending your two arm lines. Maybe you play with one arm line and then the other. Again, it's not a fancy dance. It's just what you find interesting to pay attention to. So you're using movement to generate novel sensation. And so if the movement feels like something that you do all the time, there's no novelty. And so your brain might enjoy that feeling, but you're not going to learn something. You're not going to add to your repertoire a new piece of yourself. Now, one thing that's consistent is in Feldenkrais, we use the floor as our reference. We use gravity to orient ourselves. So even though there's lots of occasions that we lift ourselves away from gravity, for this kind of exploration, check that you have a sense of the earth underneath you as you're moving, so that if parts of you come away from the floor, you're not lifting parts of yourself away from the floor, it's a result of something else, right? In other words, the kind of sensation you generate to contract a muscle to lift something is very different from the kind of sensation to just change the form on the floor. And then, where some of you are already going, go ahead and start to add to your movement so that you're bending and unbending. Very simple, not a complicated movement, just bending and unbending. Right arm line, left arm line. Listen for how those movements influence the line of your spine. And then start to explore what happens if you bend your left leg line, bend your right leg line. And there's no right combination. It's just for you to notice yourself in this way. And you could use pleasure as your guide. Why not? Or you could use the shape of your 5 lines as your guide. Can you use your arm lines and your leg lines to change your spine line without intentionally changing your spine line? What ways does your spine line move if you don't try to intentionally move it? Okay, so leave all that and take a rest. And if you're at all uncomfortable on your back, certainly roll on your side or change your position and just give yourself a rest. So, foundational elements of Feldenkrais. We start with awareness, and awareness is continuous throughout. And awareness doesn't have judgment, it just is. And then we start using the parts of your body as focal points, and the movement to guide your sense of how the parts of yourself connect together. But then we have the advanced part of Feldenkrais, which is function. Which is once you're done being a brand new baby that just wiggles on the floor trying to figure out how your parts work, you start to get desire. I want that. I want to go over there. I want to see this thing. So then the question is, how do you start to have those layers, awareness, dark spots, connectivity in your parts of your body to help you generate function in a way that is comfortable and easy? Yeah? So let's look at that. So come back onto your back. Bring your arms and legs down long. See if you can sense your 5 lines making contact with the floor. Now bend your knees and stand your feet and interlace your fingers behind your head and have your elbows forward toward the ceiling so that your hands and your arms make a sling behind your head. And bring your attention back to the line of your spine so that as you start to lift your head away from the floor, you sense the movement down the line of your spine. And in some cases, that might mean that you notice where there is not movement down the line of your spine. And you ask yourself, could there be? Notice how the spine line changes shape. And using muscular effort in this exploration, like you would for a sit-up or all kinds of different fitness classes, again, is great for its own purposes, but that's not what we're doing. So you want to keep checking in with yourself if you're kind of doing something in a repetitive way or in a familiar way, and if you could change that. so that the movement is coming from your spine as opposed to a shortening and a tightening in your musculature in the front of you. And to that end, start to explore what happens when the bottom of your spine is also lifted from the floor. So let your knees start to float in the direction of your elbows as your elbows float in the direction of your knees. How does the line of your spine change its shape? Where can you surprise yourself by doing things a little differently than you would expect yourself to? And no matter how advanced some of you are, some of you still forgot that your breathing influences how you use yourself in action. So don't believe me on that, even though you've tried it 1,000 times, and see what's different if you elevate your head and your legs as you're inhaling. What's different about how you use your spine if you elevate your knees and your elbows when you're exhaling? What changes for you right now, not theoretically? Okay, now just pause with that for a second. Bring your arms down, your legs down. Yeah, sure, you can bring your whole self down. Why not? Just a brief pause so that when you come back to this movement, now this time when you lift your head and you lift your knees, let your knees be wide apart so that your knees go in the direction of outside of your elbows. And feel how you bend your spine so that your head comes away from the floor and your knees and your feet come away from the floor. Your knees stay wide apart. What changes about your sensation along the line of your spine, to the right and the left of your spine? And if you're not deliberately exhaling when you lift, try deliberately exhaling when you lift and see how does that change the parts of yourself pressing into the floor. Some of you might find that when you elevate the top and the bottom of your spine, you do something kind of funny. You sort of lean on your back in a certain way. Well, try that intentionally. When you lift the top and the bottom of your spine, lean more onto the right side of your spine and then bring your parts down. And it's kind of a trick in instruction, right? How do you lean onto the right side of your spine when you lift your arms and your legs like that? What's the timing of it so that it's smooth and it's easy? And then try it a few times leaning on the left side of your spine. Some of you might find, oh, that's funny, one way is easier than the other for me. What do you notice about the shape of your spine in this movement? What's different about the shape of your spine when you lean to the right or when you lean to the left? Leave all that. Take a nice rest for a moment on your back. Bring your parts down. Is the way that you're using your attention changing the way that you sense yourself making contact with the floor? If I had $1 for every time in my private sessions that we, in the private sessions, instead of following instructions and doing the movement, I essentially do the movement to you. And then afterwards, it's so often, I'll ask somebody, what do they notice or what do they feel? And they'll say, well, I think I noticed this, or, oh, well, I think that. And we don't even believe our own experience because we're so used to other people telling us what our experience is. So this is the refinement of your ability to sense into the details of your own experience. And it's a process, right? Obviously. It's a practice. Okay, so roll onto one of your sides, you choose. And bend your knees up in front of you. And let's say have your top hand standing on the floor in front of your chest. And your bottom arm hand, have wherever it's the most comfortable. Could be under your head, could be in front of you. You might change that when I give you the movement in a second. Now, first thing is, now that you're on your side, you still have 5 lines, but you've changed your orientation to space and to gravity. So can you still see/sense your 5 lines and where they intersect with one another? Now you explored the movement of your arm lines and of your leg lines and just now the line of your spine, but now you're just in the same shape but a different position, right? So see if in this position you can do a movement of the line of your spine like what you just did on your back. What parts of your spine line do you feel like you're able to access? Which vertebrae come forward? Which vertebrae go back? Now here's a funny game. Whatever vertebrae are going forward and whatever vertebrae are going back, reverse it. And remember about the loud sounds, right? So if you have a way of using your back, your brain will be like, let's just do what we're used to doing. So if you reduce the effort and you reduce the movement, you might discover that you can sense a part of yourself that you're not used to sensing. And if you can sense it, then you can use it. Now this might be quite hilarious for some of you. Go ahead, roll over onto the other side. And see, if you go back to the first movement of bending your spine so that the top and the bottom of your spine come forward and the middle of your spine goes backward. Some of you might find on this side that's quite a different experience for you. It might be interesting to revisit the image, the memory of yourself on your back, lifting your head and your legs, and remember the feeling, the sensation of what parts of your spine were pressing into the floor. Are those parts of your spine moving now that you don't have the floor as a reference point? And then, yeah, exactly. You can still choose your own adventure here. So you can enjoy the bending of your spine, and you can also play with the opposite bending of your spine. Does the way that you're breathing influence how you are able to feel, let alone use your spine? Bend your knees, stand your feet. Just like last week, take hold of your right knee with your right hand. And also, like last week, start to do a movement of bringing your right knee a little to the left and a little to the right. And listen to how your right leg line not only connects to the line of your spine, but influences the line of your left leg, certainly influences the line of your right arm, and probably could influence the line of your left arm. And if you don't limit the movement, it's likely that you'll keep following the movement of your knee unless you stop yourself, right? If you bring your knee to the right, what stops you from rolling onto your right? I mean, literally, what stops you? If something stops you, then you don't. But if something doesn't stop you, then don't stop yourself. And when you bring your knee to the left, what happens? And then pause with your 2 feet standing. Now this time, hold on to the bottom of your right foot with your right hand. Bring your right knee into your chest, lift your foot toward the ceiling. Exactly, and you're trying to figure out what is the best way to hold on to your foot that's not weird for your wrist or your elbow, and you can do some research there. Are you twisting your hand in a way that creates unnecessary tension? Put your left hand behind your head. Now lift your right leg and foot toward the ceiling as you lift your head toward the ceiling, and feel how you lean on the line of your spine and how you bend the line of your spine. You can have fun with it. It's kind of a funny thing to do, right? This is a very baby movement. You know, some of you are very serious. If you saw what I saw, you would not be serious, just saying. You're being clever with how you're holding your foot. That's right. And if holding your foot creates pain or strain, then yes, hold your pant leg, hold something else close to your foot, right? And because you're all total Feldenkrais wizards, many of you are already exploring with shifting your weight a bit along the back of your spine line, aren't you? Some of you are discovering how the line of your spine changes shape when you lift and lower your right foot toward the ceiling. And then, yeah, go ahead, have a time with it. So when you lift your right foot toward the ceiling, swing your right leg over a little bit to the right. And then maybe when you lift your head and your right leg, you swing yourself a little bit over to the left. Swing is a big word, right? Maybe it's not swinging at all. When I'm doing it, it is nothing like swinging. So if you are like me and you have any kind of back pain situation or tightness in your hips, and you're just overriding that sensation, see if you can reduce the effort until there could be a moment that you actually don't have that intensity of sensation. Okay, and then let it go. Bring your arms and legs down. See how these movements are changing your sensation of yourself? Do you make a different kind of contact with the floor? And so the reason that we come back and we do this practice once a week or however many times you do awareness through movement is to keep coming back to the potential of seeing yourself in this richer, deeper way. Hold onto the bottom of your left foot with your left hand. Hold onto the outside of your foot. Pinky toe edge of your foot, or your ankle, your whatever, shin, exactly. Put your right hand behind your head. And slowly start to sense how it is to lift your head and your left foot toward the ceiling. Have your right foot standing. Yeah. And notice how your spine bends to accommodate your head and your foot lifting. And similar to what we looked at last week, notice, you can keep your eyes closed, but if you change where you're looking with your eyes, does it change how you use your spine? And how does it feel to lean a little bit to the left when you lift your head and your foot? Take a little rest. Feel your contact with the floor again. Come back to the base layer. Pure, unjudgmental awareness. Human meets the earth. Bend your knees, stand your feet. Hold onto the bottom of your right foot with your right hand. Have the bottom of your foot more or less looking toward the ceiling. And if you can't hold your foot, you hold your knee, hold your pant leg. You do what you can. Put your left hand behind your head. Now, a couple times, keep your right leg as it is. Feel the love for your right leg, and as you breathe out, lift your head as though you were going to kiss your right leg. Bring your face close to your right leg like you want to give it a kiss because you love it. You love your right leg. Now see what happens if when you lift your head to kiss your right leg, you also lean onto your right side. Can you let yourself fall to the right? And now play with the timing of it so that when you lift your head, you lift your foot like you were doing before. But then as you roll to your right, you start leaning in to kiss your right leg. And you might discover that your right knee can come to the floor, your right foot can come to the floor. And what if this combination of sensations were part of a function which we're coming to sit up? Now, I know you know how to sit up, right? You know how to tighten your abdomen, clench your teeth. You don't need to practice doing all that. The idea is just in the way that you are now, when you lean onto your right side and you're kissing your right knee, what would need to happen to be sitting up? Now let it go for a second. Bring your legs down long, arms down long. Check this out for a second. Go back to where we started. Have yourself in an X shape. Remember this guy? Now see what happens if your hands and your feet more or less stay in contact with the floor, but bend your right knee and your right elbow toward each other on the floor. Right? See how your spine changes. And most of you spontaneously also turn your head. So if you haven't, then as you bring your right elbow and your right knee toward each other, turn your head to the right. And then feel the love for your right leg and imagine that you wanted to kiss your right knee. And then come back home. What do you do with that pesky left arm? Put your left hand behind your head. Bring your right elbow and your right knee toward each other. Feel the love for your right leg and kiss your right knee. And where do you create unnecessary problems for yourself? I love these metaphors. It's so wild. This is just like the story of my life, right? Because even though I'm talking about your right elbow and your right knee, even your left elbow, how come you don't have a left knee? How come you don't have the autonomy to figure out how your left knee can make your life easier for yourself, right? That's what we do. Isn't that weird? Why do we do that? You could kiss your right knee if your left knee allowed, couldn't you? Almost. Oh, some of you are working so hard. All right, give it a rest. Pause for a second on your back. Bend your left elbow toward your left knee on the floor. How does your spine respond to that? Maybe there's a side bending, maybe there's a side bending and a rotation. Maybe there's a side bending and a rotation and a flexion or an extension. Can you feel the love for your left knee? Feel it first. You love it, right? And then if you put your right hand behind your head, you really wanted to go in for a nice kiss of your left knee. But without fighting gravity. Gravity's your friend, right? What if you lean into what you're leaning into instead of fighting what you're leaning into? Humans are so weird. Fighting, pushing, forcing. We love it. Weird. Babies don't do that. Why? Why do we start making things so hard for ourselves? What about if when you're on your left side and you're going in for a nice kiss of your left knee, last minute you change your mind. You're like, actually, I'm going to kiss my right knee. Pick your favorite side to explore. rest on your back for a moment. And let me guide you through the pieces again. I'll try to do this right-left gain. So hold on to one of your feet with that same hand on that side. Right foot, right hand, or left foot, left hand. Put your other hand behind your head. Bring your other foot to standing on the floor. Imagine that you are rolling in the direction of the foot that you're holding. Just imagine yourself rolling that way. And imagine the shape of your spine as you lean forward for a nice kiss. And then last minute you change your mind, you want to kiss your other knee, and suddenly you're inside sitting. See if you can imagine it. You roll onto your side, you bend forward to kiss your knee. You bring yourself up and you're side sitting. See what happens. Keep track of where you're interfering. I promise you, wherever you're contracting, wherever you're using your muscles strongly, I promise you that's what's getting in your way. When you're on your side, what are you leaning on? If your elbow isn't coming to the floor, you're going to be creating a lot of extra effort for yourself, right? You wouldn't be leaning on your elbow and your knee, you'd be lifting yourself, yeah. Okay, let it go for a moment. Same side, but switch your arms. Hold on to the same foot you're just holding on to, but with the other hand. And put the other hand behind your head. And continue to roll in the direction of the foot that's lifted. And continue to kiss your knee as it comes to the floor. Yeah. And then sure, you could switch sides if you want. Some of you are just using pure determination, all the muscles of your face to roll onto your side. One last time, lay down on your back, bring your arms and legs down. Feel your contact with the floor. Bring yourself into an X shape. Bend your right elbow and your right knee toward each other until you roll onto your right side. And then return. And then continue doing that, but have your left hand behind your head. And then continue doing that, but hold on to the outer edge of your right knee with your right hand to start the movement. And then roll onto your side, kiss your knee, and come up to side sitting. then if you want to reverse it, start by kissing your knee, fall onto what you can fall on, and end up back in your back. It is the weirdest brain game that your determination will signify to your brain that you must do what you want to do by all means necessary. So your ability to try something new is drastically minimized if you're desperately trying to accomplish something, right? The first time a baby figures out how to sit up is not by repetitive determination. It's just this pleasurable exploration of sensation on their back until, whoopsies, I'm sitting up. That's cool. So yeah, exactly. So in the style of advanced work, in this practice, choose how you want to explore, right? Maybe you want to rest and feel your contact with the floor. Maybe you want to go back to holding the bottom of your foot and explore. Maybe you want to do the variation we just looked at, right? But whereas in exercise you use your muscles to move your bones, in this scenario you want to use your skeleton in the earth to change your position in space. So it's the sensation along with the movement that develops the function. The sensation of the movement to develop the function. Yes, and then mostly make sure that you're having fun with it. Enjoy. Right? Maybe you need to start thinking about it less. It's a lot of words, it's a lot of parts of you. What if you were just a fabulous creature that was just born? You're just feeling the floor for the first time. And maybe you don't move in the ways that I just described at all. Maybe you just find yourself doing something completely different because you like how the pressure of yourself against the floor feels, right? Find your own way. And if you're not resting already, then find your way back onto your back. Bring your legs down long, bring your arms down, and bring your attention back to the particular way that you're making contact with the floor. Give yourself a good 4 or 5 minutes to continue resting, to make your way to sitting and standing, walking around. Try to give yourself a little time to integrate before shifting your brain.